Now, time being of essence here, and I want to be respectful of your time watching this, I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to save that question for later, but I'm going to just look at all of these bars and restaurants because this is an illustration of what you can do in Business Analyst Web. There are no shortage of services and goods and businesses that you can search for in here. And as you can see here, once we've done a add data and create maps, we can create a point of interest map. The point of interest can be a good, a service, a restaurant, a cafe, a lumber yard. The sky's the limit here. You've got literally millions of business locations here. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this is a typical challenge that comes up in GIS where we're not seeing the data. So we want to make sure that our scale is optimal for looking at the data. And I've checked eating establishments, so you can see, as probably you would suspect, big chains show up. Chains like Starbucks, Safe, Subway, Chipotle, etc. They've got their numbers here in the top 5, so that kind of makes sense. 7-Eleven being a convenience store, of course. And let's say I want to get rid of those eating places. I really just want to focus on the drinking places, ideally, the non-alcoholic drinking places, the coffee shops, etc. So maybe I want to focus on those. And then we're getting into the issue is, if I exclude the eating places, are the Starbucks going to go away? Even though it's a coffee, they have food as well. So that's probably why it shows up here. So it's all about understanding the data as well as looking at these patterns, relationships, and possible trends to help you make a smarter, wiser decision. So let's go ahead and say, okay, well, what do we have now? I've got this clustering effect going on where I see 3s, 2s, 4s, and as I change the scale, that clustering will kick in. That way you're not over cluttering your map. So clustering is actually really powerful. Now you can turn the clustering off to see individual businesses, and that is powerful to be able to do that as well. You can also look at individual businesses here, as I'm doing right now, looking at the coffee commissary and a couple of other businesses in this area that I'm potentially looking at to potentially cite my own. You can see the density increases as we go toward the coast, more of a touristy area, the Santa Monica Pier, etc. So it makes sense that there's going to be more of those kinds of establishments in that area. So let's go back to the variable picker. And now let's go to age, and you can see here that, again, look at the size of that scroll bar. Literally hundreds of just age variables alone. And this time, let's do something a little expansive of what we did before. And I'm going to, again, be sensitive to your time. I'm only going to pick, even though the goal was to get 18 to 34-year-olds, I'm just going to look at 18, 19s, and 20s, some things. 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. You can take this same analogy and take it to 18 to 34, but I'm just going to illustrate the 18, 19, 20s. Notice I'm creating a custom variable and I'm dragging in the 18, 19s, and 20s. And notice that I've actually done it by mistake here. When I get to the percentage, it's going to give me an error here in a moment because it's going to say, hey, Joseph, you've got 3 of the same thing in here. You didn't drag them correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and delete 2 of those 18s. And now let's do a little bit more of a careful job. Now I've got 18, 19s, and 20-year-olds as a 2024. Okay, great. Now I'm going to create this all by percentage. I can multiply them. I can add them. I can do some other things here as well. So fascinating to be able to do this. Okay, now I've got 18, 19, and 20-somethings. Yes, very good. And let's go ahead. That's looking good there. So remember, I've got the percentage. I don't have the raw number. Why do sometimes I want raw numbers and sometimes I want percentage and sometimes I want an index? It just depends on your goal. Sometimes these census tracts and block groups don't have this. Ideally, they're around the same population, but not always. So you've got that variability. And I want to remove some of that variability by going with a percentage instead of the raw